All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Robb Cramer, and I am the president of the Greater Upper Valley Trout Unlimited chapter in Vermont and New Hampshire. I'm also a member of the TU National Science Advisory Board for Trout in the Classroom, and I've been working with Joe and many of the teachers, particularly in the Greater Upper Valley chapter area, for I think 7 or 8 years now with the Trout in the Classroom program. And it's really just an amazing program, and it's a real privilege to be a part of it. And so I'm sorry I can't be there today in person with you all. I had a family obligation that I couldn't get out of today. So hopefully this video will help, and importantly, Joe has my contact information, and I'm happy to take any questions either directly from you as a teacher or through your TIC coordinator of your local chapter area. And so, I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about water chemistry. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Great. All right. So yeah, we're here today to talk about water chemistry and also this really amazing technique called pre-cycling. And I think, both of these opportunities in the program provide students, some really cool biology. Both the testing of the water chemistry itself as well as the pre-cycling process, I think, provides you as a teacher a lot of opportunities to engage kids in topic areas, like chemistry, biological filtration, ecological succession in an environment, just simple like good conservation practices, why we take care of our water, why we have things like the Clean Water Act, for example. And so, just this part of the program illustrates a lot of those important principles. And so, one of the first things that you need to accomplish is the fish, of course, live in water. And, in your trout tank, in your TIC tank, it's a closed environment. And so you have to create an environment in there that's conducive for the development of the fish over the course of the program. And so, 80% of the biological activity in your tank, this coming year is going to happen within the filter, the biological filter. And so, the most important aspect of that filter really is the microbiome, so to speak, or the bacteria that are going to be in your tank. And so these are going to be involved in degrading organic material that you put into the tank, whether it's the eggs or the food that's coming into the tank. And then this nitrite, this really key important part of a closed system called the nitrate cycle. And so we're going to talk more about the nitrogen cycle and what we do to try and prevent some of the intermediates of that cycle from accumulating in your tank and causing some health issues for the fish. And so if you can set up a healthy biological filter, it'll really minimize the number of water changes you need to do over the course of the year, and it'll keep your fish so much healthier, and you'll have a high success rate at the end of the program. So again, think about the fish live in the water, and so we need to keep those tanks as clean as we can and with as well established a biological filter as we can. And so, I love this part of the program because I'm a microbiologist by training, and so this part of the program really illustrates how different organisms in our environment interact with each other to create a community. And I think that's a really important theme that you can use in this part of the program to educate your students about the importance of ecological succession, clean cold water, and organism health. So in this case, the health of the brook trout. So the water testing you're going to do in the program really falls into these seven aspects. And so pH is a measure of the acidity of the water. So you're basically measuring the number of hydrogen ions that are in the water. And a neutral rating, the pH is on a scale from 1 to 12, and so your neutral reading is a pH of 7, and that really is kind of what we're shooting for in the program in your tank is a pH around neutral. Brook trout can live at a very wide pH range, actually 3.5 up to like 9.8, which is pretty remarkable biology. But the key is, what we want to strive for in the program is a stable pH in your tank. And, for anybody that's raised tropical fish, there's a lot of products you can buy to alter the pH of your tank. And, those are usually losing situations because of the complex, microbial community that's evolved in the tank, the pH is going to swing widely if you don't have the proper biological filter set up in your tank. And so, one of the most important aspects of your tank water to maintain that stable pH is the KH, or carbonate, value of the tank. And so, here in Vermont, we're pretty lucky if you get your water from a well, where the water is going to generally have a high KH value. And so this is an important concept here, something for you all to think about, is where you get your water for your tanks. If you have access to well water in Vermont, chances are that water is going to be really good for the brook trout. If you have to go through a school system, through a town water supply, that's fine. A lot of people have to do that, but your values here are probably going to be off a little bit and maybe need some help or modulation, particularly with this carbonate hardness. Water coming from the municipal systems often have a lower KH value than we want in the tank, because what the KH does is it's a buffer for pH changes. And so if you have a higher KH value, and in the program we want to shoot for about 100 to 150 parts per million, that really will stabilize your pH and avoid swings in that pH while the nitrogen cycle is going on, which potentially can cause those swings. And then also, if the pH swings too far, what happens is you can kill that microbial community that's driving that nitrogen cycle. So this is often overlooked, this KH value. So again, 100 to 150 is really what we're looking for. And if you can get a water source that already has that naturally, you're just so much better off than trying to add, supplements to your water to get that KH value. If you have to use municipal water and you have a low KH, we'll talk about some options that you have, for getting that KH value up. Another measure of your water quality is general hardness. And so in Vermont, we tend to have hard water. Again, coming from wells. If you're getting a municipal source, it's probably going to be a lot softer. And so essentially what the general hardness is, it's a measure of the calcium and magnesium in your water. And so, all organisms need these micronutrients or minerals for normal biological function. And so, having a certain level of hardness in the tank is good. It provides those minerals to the fish, to the bacteria, to carry out different biological reactions. And so, we typically shoot for around 100, parts per million with general hardness. But, this is a value here where we tend to not worry about it as much in the Trout in the Classroom program. The fish can adjust as long as you have, minimum 50 to 100 parts per million. Those micronutrients are pretty abundant in municipal water as well as your well water in Vermont. And so the next three are byproducts of the nitrogen cycle, and they're listed in order here: ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. And I'm going to talk about them as we talk about pre-cycling here, and the importance of the nitrogen cycle and potentially pre-cycling your tank for the TIC program. And so this is a really nice overview of the nitrogen cycle. And so what happens basically is organic material will get degraded by bacteria. These bacteria are found in the environment. They're on your hands. They're in the soil. They're just about everywhere. So we don't really need to artificially add these bacteria to our Trout in the Classroom tanks. Once you introduce biological material into the tank, those bacteria are going to come with them. And so very quickly, dead plant matter in the environment. In our case, it's going to be uneaten food, trout food, and even the dead bacteria themselves. As they're degraded, are going to release ammonia. And so this is one of the first things you're going to measure in your tank. And ammonia can be very toxic to fish, particularly at high pH levels. Another reason to keep your pH within that 6.5 to 8 range is to prevent, if you do get an accumulation of ammonia, to prevent that toxicity from having. And so in the Trout in the Classroom program, we're really shooting for this value to be less than 1 part per million. And ideally, once you start the program, after you pre-cycle, you actually won't have any ammonia detectable in your tank, meaning that your biological filter is actually working really well. But ammonia is produced. So what happens to it? Well, there's another group of bacteria that eat the ammonia. So you can start to see here this ecological cycle, this collaboration between organisms arising, in your tank, and the ammonia then is converted into nitrite. And nitrite is actually even more poisonous than ammonia. And so there are these really important bacteria called nitrous monas species that break down the ammonia into nitrite. And so we are going to add these to our tank. This is the Night Out 2 that you'll see in the manual that you're going to add to the tank. These are cultures of live nitrous monas and nitrobacter bacteria that will promote this nitrogen cycle. So, and nitrite is if you see it in your tank, it's a bad sign, and it's something that needs to be remedied, essentially immediately with water changes. And so, hopefully when you pre-cycle, you'll avoid that situation. And but if you see it, the solution here is going to be water change, and that's a big theme of the program here. Is a lot of the water quality issues that you may face can be solved fairly quickly with a water change, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the presentation. But after that nitrite is formed, again, we have some ecological succession. There's another group of bacteria that can use the nitrite, and so they take the nitrite and they reduce it to nitrate. And nitrate, fortunately, is pretty benign when it comes to fish health. Most fish can tolerate pretty high levels of nitrate in the tank. You're always going to have some levels of nitrate in a closed system in your aquarium. We shoot for keeping it below 40 parts per million in the TIC program. The fish can tolerate higher levels of that. We do want to keep it lower if we can. But this is something that can be used as a nutrient by plants, and it's very easily removed with water changes. And so, yeah, when you conduct your pre-cycling, if you do that, or if you don't, as you add the eggs and the fish go through the development process, the end product of the nitrogen cycle that you measure is nitrate. And again, you will measure nitrate, and it's not something to panic over. If we start to get up to 80 parts per million, that's when I usually start to recommend, all right, let's get that down below 40 and do a 50% water change. But again, in general, this is the breakdown product of the cycle that is okay to see in your tank. And so, as I mentioned, here's the bacteria that are doing this process. Here's a nice little graph here in the lower right corner where you can see the amount of nitrogen, which is like the dead material added to the tank. As you add more of that, the nitrogen cycle will start to be initiated, and those different bacteria will eat the different products, and then they will grow. And so you get this really nice ecological succession that happens that gets rid of the toxic ammonia and nitrite in your tank. And as that nitrate accumulates, eventually you'll have to do a water change. And so, one of the big issues here, again, why KH is so important is, as this reaction occurs, the ammonia to nitrite reduction, this actually will release hydrogen ions into the water, and it will acidify it very rapidly. And so your KH, that buffering, that carbonate buffering that we talked about, that needs to be high, like 100 to 150. And so one of the areas where tanks fail in the TIC program is right here, where if you have a low KH and this cycle starts, that pH is going to plummet down below 6. And when that happens, that also then can kill the bacteria and prevent them from actually completing the nitrogen cycle. And then you start to get accumulation of ammonia and nitrite in the tank, which can be toxic to the fish. And so again, the interaction here between these different chemical parameters in the water is critical to control and maintain. But it provides a lot of opportunities for the students to get hands-on involvement and to understand some of these basic biochemistry principles that are going on in their tanks. So how do we prevent the bad scenario from happening, this ammonia and nitrite from accumulating in the tank? And so one of the ways to do that is called pre-cycling. So that means that we're establishing an effective microbial community into the tank, your TIC tank, before the fish arrive. And so in our timeline here in Vermont, that this is going to be November, December, where you're pre-cycling before the eggs arrive in January. And the goal is, again, to establish these nitrosmonas and nitrobacter bacteria in your tank so they can do the nitrogen cycle when you actually add the eggs to the tank. And so what this avoids is the spike of ammonia and the spike of nitrite that occur when the cycle first happens, when you haven't set up those microbial communities to deal with the ammonia and the nitrite as they form. And so, like, if for anybody that's bought tropical fish before, when you buy a tank, at least when you buy them for your kids, they're all excited, they want to buy the tank. Cool. Sorry, I had a little freeze there. They want to buy the tank and they want to get the fish right away, but if you put those fish in right away, that spike that happens when the nitrogen cycle takes off often will kill many of the fish. And so that's what we're trying to avoid here with the pre-cycling, is to have all that happen without fish in the tank, without the eggs in the tank. So when they do come, that microbial community is established and you have a really good biofilter already set up for the fish to develop properly. And so one of the challenges we face with the TIC program here is water temperature, right? And so we were just talking about tropical fish, and all these additives and the tank chemistry, a lot of that has all been developed with an eye toward the tropical fish industry. So tank temperatures are well above 70 degrees Fahrenheit with those fish. But here in the TIC program, we're down around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and so it is really difficult for this nitrogen cycle to take off and establish without pre-cycling, given the low water temperatures. And so one of the tricks that we use to get these filters established before the eggs arrive is to actually keep your tank at room temperature or above prior to the eggs arriving and during the pre-cycling process, which really is the optimal temperature for this nitrogen cycle to be developed in your tank. And so, the pre-cycling protocol is in chapter 4. As if you remember back to the beginning of the talk, you need to establish some kind of source of ammonia. And so there's a lot of ways to do this. If you go online, you'll see people even cut up pieces of chicken to add into their tank. I don't recommend doing that at all for a lot of reasons, but the point is you need some kind of organic material to kick this off, or you simply add the ammonia to the tank. And so we do that in the TIC program by using this solution called Dr. Tim's ammonium chloride, which was developed to pre-cycle tanks. And so that is part of your list of reagents that you purchase for the program, and it's a great way to really rigorously control the amount of ammonium that you add to the tank to jumpstart the cycling process. And so again, we want to make sure that pH is around 7, somewhere 6.5 to 8, and that really critically your KH value is around between 100 and 150. 150 is ideal before you start the pre-cycling process. And so, we're going to go ahead and add those good bacteria. And, we're using the Nitrosmonas and Nitrospira in Night Out 2 to establish those bacteria in your tank. And so, you're almost certainly, as you go through the protocol, going to need a couple different additions of ammonia. Think of the ammonia as food for the Nitrosmonas bacteria. Like, they need to eat that ammonia to produce the nitrate, which then feeds the Nitrospira, which then produces the nitrate, right? And so if you feed those communities, they end up working with each other to detoxify the ammonia and the nitrite in the tank to keep your fish safe. The key to the whole protocol is to take the measurements daily. Monitor, monitor, monitor. It's really important to avoid having a spike of ammonia right at the start. So follow the protocol, add the correct amount of Dr. Tim's for the tank volume that you have. Some of you are going to use 55-gallon tanks, some of you have smaller tanks. Do those calculations so you don't add too much ammonia, which will kill the bacteria right before the cycle can even start. So again, using your testing kits and monitoring is really an important key to successfully pre-cycling. Okay, so here's just a rough overview. Again, the whole protocol is listed in Chapter 4 of the manual. Take your initial water readings, look at pH and your KH, make sure that they're where they want them to be. Add your ammonia, and after you add the ammonia, go ahead and remeasure to make sure that you're adding enough to feed the bacteria, but not too much to kill them and prevent them from working. Okay, so if the ammonia looks good, go ahead and then add the night out too, and then come back the next day, and you should start to see, even on day 2 already, some nitrite being produced. Okay, and again, this is a great opportunity to get the students involved. They can do this pre-cycling. It's really a great opportunity for them to learn the nitrogen cycle, learn about ecological succession, a little bit of microbiology, and then of course the chemistry here. There's a lot of ifs. This is biology, right? It's biochemistry. We can give you the recipe and follow the protocol, but every one of your tanks is going to be a little bit different. And so the measuring here is really key. And so in some tanks on day 3, you may see ammonia and nitrite levels below 3. So you need to add a little bit more to get back up to around 4 parts per million to feed those bacteria. And so if it's more than 3 parts per million, then don't add any more. And so you have to be able to be a little bit flexible here with the biology of your specific tank. And the key to that again is just measuring each day. And so what you're trying to get here, of course, is you're trying to get rid of the ammonia and the nitrite. And so when you get readings of around 0 for ammonia and nitrite, and you're seeing the nitrate increase, then you're in really good shape. All right, then you've established those 2 bacterial communities that can deal with any ammonia and nitrite that your trout will end up producing in your tank, and so then that won't accumulate to cause the toxicity issues. Now, a really important a point here is that once you've established that biofilter, sometime in December, you got to feed the bacteria until the eggs arrive, right? They need ammonia and nitrite to live and maintain themselves. And so it's important to feed them. And how we do that is we just add some fish food. And so I know many of you are going to go away for Christmas break. You don't go to your schools. That's okay. There are these little vacation feeders you can buy, little chunks of food that'll last 7 days or 10 days. And you can add one of those to your tank before you leave for break, and that'll keep the bacteria fed during break. So the other key thing that I mentioned here is the temperatures. While you're pre-cycling here, you're not going to have your chiller on. You want your tank temperatures 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit for this to really go fast. And so that's often one of the first questions I ask you if you email me and you're having problems with your cycling, is because what happens is the schools turn off the heat at night. And so if you don't have a heater in your tank, that drop in temperature down to 60, 55 degrees, in the evening, that can stall the cycle pretty significantly. So another little trick we have, I think it's on the order sheet, is you can order a small tank heater to keep the temperature, up to between 70 and 75 while you're doing this pre-cycling. And so that's one of the first tips. Here's just some tips for you. Really using a tank heater to maintain that temperature while you're pre-cycling is really great. It helps you establish those bacteria really fast. Doing your calculations, making sure you're adding the right amount of ammonia when, and then monitoring not only just the ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate, but also keep an eye on the KH and pH. There's a certain level of error using the test strips that we use, and so if you're right at the threshold levels for KH and pH, I'd be a little suspicious, and make sure you're monitoring those. And if you're not seeing the cycle progress how you think you should, it could be because your KH and pH levels are just a little bit off. So it's something easy to overlook. Another thing easy to overlook is the spike in nitrate. It happens really fast. And so, this often happens. I get a panic. Day 2 comes and the teacher's like, I see nitrate in my tank, but I never saw the nitrite. That's okay. That means those nitrobacter really ate the nitrite fast, and you have good tank conditions. If you see nitrate, you definitely had nitrite at one point in the tank, and so that means the cycling process is working. Again, the time that this takes, 7 to 8 days is the ideal optimum situation, but each tank is going to be a little bit different. Your water supply is different. The Night Out 2 that you get has a little bit different quantities of the different bacteria. Tank temperatures are going to likely differ across the schools. So it could take 14 days, it could take 6 days. Each tank is going to vary, and what really matters is, again, the monitoring. The data will tell you when your tank is cycled. You do want to keep your filter running. The bacteria like those; they need oxygen, and so it's important to keep that filter running during the pre-cycling process. And so again, once you've established your biofilter, you need to feed them over that holiday break, until those eggs arrive. Once the eggs arrive, the first couple weeks I would continue to add a little fish food, but once you have biological material in the tank, that will be more than sufficient to keep those bacteria happy and to keep your biofilter happy. And when you email me and something's going wrong, a lot of the times I'm going to say, let's do a water change. Let's just start over. It's one of the beautiful things about the program. You can do water changes with minimal impact. And if you have too much ammonia, too much nitrite, if you accidentally spilled the bottle in the tank, you can just quickly redo a water change. If you have access to well water, this is great because you don't need to pre-treat it with any chemicals to get rid of the chlorine and all the other stuff that gets put in the municipal water. But if you are using municipal water, it's good to keep a few gallons of that around, just hanging out, that's been treated, so you can do water changes quickly and don't have to worry about adding those chemicals that are in the municipal tank supply to your aquarium. But with that, unfortunately, I'm not there to answer any questions for you, but I am available via email. I think during the year we typically have some check-in Zoom meetings, and I'll hopefully be available for those. I wish you all the best. I strongly encourage you to pre-cycle. I think it's a great educational opportunity for the kids. I do think it produces healthier tanks. I think most of the schools, throughout the nation now are encouraging pre-cycling, both for the educational opportunities, but as well as the success rate, with keeping a really healthy environment for the trout that you're hopefully with the kids be able to release. And that's the picture here. This is some kids from Marion Cross in Norwich last year at their TIC release day that I went and was fortunate enough to participate in releasing the trout and taking measures of water quality, oxygen levels, looking at flow rate, looking at the macroinvertebrate population in this particular stream. And so, soon all of you will be out there in local streams and brooks, hopefully releasing some beautiful trout that you raised. So with that, thanks. Sorry again that I couldn't be there in person today, and please do contact me with any questions. Have a great day.